Welcome to Learn English Speaking. Let's Talk Stories. Here we bring you amazing stories to improve your English fluency. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more exciting lessons. Let's learn together.
Chapter 8. A Surprise Phone Call. It was 7 o'clock when Tom arrived in Taksim Square. He got out of the taxi and walked towards his hotel. He felt nervous. Was someone watching him? Was someone sitting in a car watching his hotel? He hurried inside. "Good evening," said the woman at reception. "Good evening," said Tom. He took his room key and went upstairs. He locked his door, took off his shoes, and lay down on the bed. He felt tired, but nervous and excited at the same time. For a long time he lay on the bed, listening to the noises in the street outside, and thinking about one person. Angela. The phone rang. It rang loudly, and Tom jumped nervously. Kamal, he thought, and picked up the receiver. "Yes? This is reception, Mr. Smith. I have a call for you." "Thank you," said Tom. "Hello? Is that Tom Smith?" It was a woman's voice. "Yes? Who's that?" Tom asked. His heart was beating fast. "You don't know me, Mr. Smith, but I'm a friend of Angela's. I have something to tell you. Can we meet somewhere?" "Who are you?" "My name's Julie. As I said, I'm a friend of Angela's. Listen, I don't want to talk on the phone. Can we meet somewhere?" Yes, sure," said Tom, thinking quickly. "Do you know the American bar at the Park Hotel?" "I know it. I'll be there in 20 minutes. There was a click, and then there was silence. Tom put the phone down and jumped to his feet. "I must tell Kamal," he said to himself. He picked up the phone. "Reception? Can I have Istanbul 368245? Tom waited impatiently. "Sorry, sir. There's no answer," said the woman at reception. "Okay. I'll try later." Tom put the phone down and left the room. There were only a few people in the American bar when Tom went in. He sat down at a table by a window. From there he could see everyone who came through the door. Tom sat drinking a beer and watching the door. Who was Julie? What did she want? Tom would soon find out. A girl came in a few minutes later. She had long blonde hair and was wearing jeans. The girl looked round the bar, then walked over to Tom's table. "Hi," she said. "I'm Julie." "Hello," he said. "I'm Tom. Please sit down." She sat down. The waiter came over. "Would you like a drink?" said Tom. "A coffee, please," she said. The waiter nodded and left. "So, you're Tom," Julie said. "You look just like your photograph. Angela showed me a picture of you." "But how did you find me?" Tom asked. "I went to the British consulate today," Julie explained. "I spoke to Mr. Pennington. He told me the name of your hotel. I knew you were coming to Istanbul, and I wanted to speak to you." She looked round nervously. "Listen, Tom," she went on. "There's something strange going on. What do you know about Angela's accident?" "Only what the consulate told me today," said Tom. He told Julie about his conversation with Mr. Pennington. "And are you satisfied?" she asked. Tom looked at her. "Tell me what you think," he said slowly. All right, said Julie. Let's start at the beginning. Angela came to Istanbul 2 months ago. I met her at a party soon after she arrived, and we became good friends. At the beginning, she was happy. She enjoyed her job. She liked working for her boss. Dernia? That's right. Everything was fine. I saw her quite often. We used to have lunch together and go sightseeing. And then, 2 weeks ago, something happened. Angela seemed worried about something to do with her work. I asked her what was wrong, but she didn't want to talk about it. Then, one lunchtime, we were together in a restaurant, and suddenly Dernia came in. The moment she saw him, she became nervous. I think she was afraid of him. Go on, Tom said. Well, I don't know anything else. She never told me what she was worried about. I saw her a few more times. And then she had the accident. She looked at Tom. But it is strange, isn't it? Julie went on. She was worried about something. Her job, or her boss, or something. But she wouldn't talk about it. And then she had an accident. She stopped. That's all, she said. That's what I wanted to tell you. Tom leant across the table. Shall I tell you something? He said quietly. Yesterday, on the way into Istanbul, I saw her. Julie stared at him. Where? She asked. I was in the airport bus, coming into the city. We were in Millet Street, near Aksaray. Angela was going into a building with 2 men. What do you mean, going into a building? Which building? Well, I don't know. There are a lot of offices in the building. I went there today. There was a dentist and a doctor. Doctor, said Julie. That's interesting. What do you mean? Angela had a virus 2 weeks ago. A bad attack. She was getting pills from a doctor. That explains it. She needed more pills or treatment. She was going to a doctor. Tom thought for a moment. So that's where she was going, he said. To the doctor's. Maybe I can go and ask the doctor a few questions. Julie looked worried. Be careful, Tom, she said. What do you mean? Just be careful, she repeated. Something strange is happening. It could be dangerous for you if you ask too many questions. Okay, said Tom. But I'm sure Angela is in this city somewhere. She's in trouble. The police and the consulate say she's dead, so they won't help. But I think she's alive. She's in Istanbul somewhere. And I'm not leaving until I find her. Chapter 9. Goodbye, Mr. Dernia. Later that evening, Tom phoned Kamal. He told him about his meeting with Julie. Kamal listened while Tom explained what had happened. Okay, he said when Tom had finished. Listen, I think I understand what's happening. Angela was working for Dernia, right? Yes. And then she was worried about something. Something at work, right? Yes. Okay. And then she had her accident. But it wasn't an accident. Tom, You know what I think? I think Angela is alive. She's here, somewhere in Istanbul. Dernya is holding her prisoner. What? Think about it, Tom. Angela was worried about something at work. We think it was something to do with Dernya and his export business. And now she has disappeared. But she isn't dead. There was no car accident. Dernya is holding her prisoner. I'm sure of it. But, began Tom, I don't... Listen, Tom, continued Kamal. What about the man in the Topkapi Palace today? The man who followed us? You know what I think, Tom? I think Dernya and his friends have been watching you since you arrived in Istanbul. They know where you are staying. They know you went to the consulate, and that's how they followed us to the palace today. They know everything about you, Tom. God, said Tom quietly. My God, Kamal. I think you're right. You must be right. But what are we going to do now? I'll tell you, said Kamal. They know where you are staying, and they know you're looking for Angela. That's why they're watching you. They want to find out what you do next. Well, I'll tell you what you're going to do next. You're going to leave Istanbul. Now listen. Next morning, Tom checked out of his hotel. Thank you, he said to the receptionist. And goodbye. Leaving Istanbul? Yes, I'm going home. Goodbye, sir. Have a good journey. Tom took a taxi to Dernya's office. The driver stopped outside. Wait here, please, said Tom. I'll be back in a few minutes. He went into the office. Good morning, he said to the secretary. Is Mr. Dernya here? I've come to say goodbye. She went to the office. Mr. Dernya came out. Ah, Mr. Smith. Good morning, Mr. Dernya. I've come to say goodbye. Leaving so soon? Yes. I went to the British consulate yesterday and spoke to Mr. Pennington. It seems there's nothing I can do here. I'm going back to London. Thank you for your help. You're welcome, Mr. Smith. Once again, I'm very sorry about your fiancée. I'm sorry your visit to Istanbul wasn't a happy one. Thank you. And goodbye. My plane leaves at midday. At midday? I see. Goodbye, Mr. Smith. Have a good journey. The two men shook hands. Tom turned and left the office. His taxi was waiting. The airport, please, he said as he got in. The taxi moved off. Another car, parked 20 meters away, moved away from the pavement and started following. At the airport, Tom walked over to the British Airways desk. He asked about the flight to London, but he did not check in. Then he bought a newspaper and sat down to wait. He looked round the busy airport. Somewhere among all these people, he thought, someone is watching me. He opened his newspaper and started reading. Then there was an announcement over the loudspeaker. British Airways announced the departure of their flight TK979 for London. Will passengers please proceed to Gate 6 for boarding? Tom picked up his things and walked towards passport control. There were lots of people at the entrance to passport control. Tom went into the crowd of people and moved towards a large man whose relatives were saying goodbye. Suddenly, he turned and went into the men's toilet. In the toilet, he took off his jacket and started to wash his hands and face. No one followed him into the toilet. Then there was another announcement. British Airways Flight TK979 for London. This is the final announcement. Will passengers please proceed immediately to Gate 6? This gate is now closing. Tom heard the announcement, but didn't move. He looked at his watch and smiled to himself. The man in the grey raincoat walked over to the telephone kiosks and dialed a number.
Hello. I saw him leave.
Yes.
He's on the plane.
The man put the phone down and walked away towards the exit. Half an hour later, Tom was in a taxi on his way to Kamal's flat in Sicily. Kamal opened the door.
Hello, Tom,
he smiled.
Everything okay?
No problem, smiled Tom. I went into the crowd at passport control. Then I hid in the toilet at the last minute.
Well done. Dernier and his friends will think you have gone back to London. Now you can stay here in my flat, and we can start looking for Angela.
And we know where to start, don't we?
Yes. Dernier's office,
replied Kamal. Chapter 10. An important discovery. Kamal and Tom had something to eat. Then they sat down and made their plans for the evening.
We'll watch Dernier's office this evening, said Kamal. When he comes out, we'll follow him. Then we'll find out where he lives.
Won't that be dangerous for me? Asked Tom.
He knows me, remember?
What if he sees me? Kamal smiled and stood up.
I've thought about that, and I've got just what you need. Look!
Kamal opened a drawer.
Put this on,
he said.
A wig?
Said Tom.
And a false moustache, too. Go on, try them on.
Tom put on the wig and moustache. He looked in the mirror.
No one will recognize me now, he laughed. Not even my own mother.
Good, said Kamal.
And if you also wear dark glasses, you will be completely disguised.
It was 7 o'clock, and the shops and small businesses in the quiet street were closing. Tom and Kamal sat in the car, waiting patiently.
He'll be leaving soon,
said Tom. Further down the street, they could see the entrance to Dernier's office. They sat in silence, watching. Time passed slowly. 7:10. 7:15. Then, suddenly,
"There he is,"
whispered Tom.
"That's him."
Dernier came out of his office and locked the door carefully behind him. He looked along the street, then walked over to a grey Mercedes car and got in. The Mercedes moved away from the pavement and drove along the street. It turned right onto the main road.
"Let's go,"
said Kamal, and drove down the street. They turned right, following the Mercedes. The main road was busy, and they drove along in the traffic.
"There it is," said Kamal. "About 50 meters away, in front of that taxi."
"Careful," said Tom.
"Don't drive too close. Stay behind the taxi."
They drove along the main road, watching the Mercedes.
"He's turning left. Okay."
Tom and Kamal followed. They were now driving along the wide street beside the sea. For 20 minutes they drove towards the suburbs of the city. Now they were outside the city centre, and the traffic was moving faster. The Mercedes turned off the main road.
"Slow down,"
said Tom.
"You're too near."
They slowed down until the Mercedes had turned the corner, then drove faster. When they turned the corner, the road was empty.
Damn,
said Kamal, and drove faster. They crossed another side street and looked quickly right and left.
Left, said Tom. There he is.
They turned and drove along a quiet street of private villas. This was the most dangerous part, because there was not much traffic. If Dernier looked round now, he would see that someone was following him.
He's stopping,
said Kamal, as he saw the Mercedes brake lights going on. Kamal drove slowly. The Mercedes was now 50 meters in front of them.
He's turning,
said Kamal. The Mercedes turned off the street and drove through the gates of a large villa. The villa was surrounded by trees and bushes. Already the gates were closing behind it as the Mercedes drove up to the house. Tom and Kamal drove past the closed gate and continued along the street.
Well,
said Tom,
that's where Dernier lives.
That's a start, said Kamal.
Come on, let's go home now.
Back in Kamal's flat, they discussed what they had seen.
I think that Angela is in the villa,
said Tom. Kamal agreed.
What do we do now?
asked Tom.
We can't get into the villa. There are probably men guarding it.
I agree, said Kamal.
We think she's in the villa, but we can't get in there.
It doesn't matter. The villa isn't important, said Tom.
What do you mean?
Think about it, Tom replied. Remember what Julie said. Angela was worried about something at work. She worked in the office. She never went to the villa. So what we're looking for is in the office. The villa isn't important.
You're right,
said Kamal. He stood up and walked over to the window.
Listen, you've been inside the office. What's it like?
When you go in the door, Tom told him, there's the window and a small reception desk. Then there's an office and a door to Dernier's private office at the back.
Anything else?
Tom tried to remember the inside of the office. Yes, he said. There's a door, another door, at the back.
Okay,
said Kamal.
They must have a workshop or a store through that door. That's where they'll keep all the things they export. So somehow we have to have a look inside.
Kamal thought for a moment.
I've got an idea,
he said suddenly.
Dernier exports onyx ornaments to England. My parents sell things like that in their shop. So if I had a box of ornaments and I wanted to sell them very cheaply, who would buy them from me?
Tom looked at him, then smiled.
Dernier,
he said.
Exactly,
smiled Kamal.
Now, let's think carefully.
Chapter 11. A Clever Trick. Ibrahim Dernier was alone in his private office. He was working at his desk, finishing some paperwork. He always did his paperwork alone before going home. He looked at his watch. Another 10 minutes. Then he would be finished. There was a knock at the door. Dernier looked up from his papers. He didn't move. There was another knock, louder this time. He put the papers in his desk and locked it. Then he got up and went out into the office. He could see a man outside, standing in the doorway. "We're closed," he said through the glass door. "Come back tomorrow."
"I'm sorry," said the man. "It's urgent. Please?"
Dernier was annoyed. He unlocked the door and opened it. "We're closed. Can't you see?"
"I'm very sorry to bother you," said Kamal. "But I was hoping to find someone here. I have a problem. You see, I need some money, quickly. I must have it tomorrow morning, early. It's for... Well, it doesn't matter why I need the money. That's my problem. But I have some onyx ornaments to sell, and I heard you would be interested.
He held out a beautiful onyx ashtray.
Would you be interested in buying 50 of these?
Dernier took the ashtray and looked at it carefully. Kamal could see he was interested.
Very good quality,
said Kamal. 50, did you say?
That's right. They are in the car outside.
How much do you want? Dernier asked.
15,000 lira for 50,
said Kamal. That's too much, said Dernier. I'll give you 5,000.
Please, I need the money urgently,
said Kamal. Then you will accept 5,000, said Dernier. Kamal looked disappointed.
All right, he said. You can have them for 6,000 lira. They're in a big box in the car. Could you help me carry them? They're very heavy.
Dernier went with him to the car. Together they carried the box into the office.
This is really very kind of you,
said Kamal.
They are heavy.
They carried the box to the back of the office. Kamal looked quickly at the door.
Have you got a store somewhere? He asked. I'm sure you don't want the box in your office.
Dernier thought for a moment. He looked at the large box in his small office and said, "One moment." He took a key from his pocket and unlocked the door. They picked up the box and carried it through into the workshop. It was a long, wide room, with windows on one side. There were a lot of articles in the room. Onyx tables, lamps, ornaments, brass and leather articles. On a workbench, there were rows of tools and cutting equipment. "This is fine," said Dernier. "Put it down here." They put down the box. Dernier took out his wallet. 6,000 lira, he said. At that moment, the telephone in his office rang. Dernier looked annoyed. "Excuse me one moment," he said to Kamal. He went back to his private office. Kamal looked at his watch and smiled as Dernier disappeared through the door. Quickly he looked round the workshop. There was a door at the other end. He looked out of the windows. Outside, there was a small courtyard, and at one end of the courtyard, a wall, 2 meters high. On the workbench, at the end of the workshop, there were several onyx table lamps. Kamal looked quickly at them. They had been cut in half with a cutting instrument. The inside had been removed. Kamal looked closely. Suddenly, Kamal heard Dernier say goodbye. He turned quickly away from the workbench. "Sorry to keep you waiting," Dernier said as he came back in. "Not at all," said Kamal. "I can see you're a very busy man." Dernier counted out 6,000 lira. "Thank you," said Kamal. "I really need this money. Well, I won't take any more of your time." Dernier walked with him to the door into the street. "Thanks again," said Kamal. "Good night." "Good night," said Dernier, and closed the door. Kamal went back to his car and drove home. Tom was waiting for him. "Did it work?" he asked as Kamal came into the apartment. "Perfectly," smiled Kamal. "My brother phoned just at the right moment, when we were in the workshop. Dernier believed my story, too. And he gave me a very low price for the onyx." "What did you see in the workshop?" Kamal looked serious.
Well, not very much, I'm afraid. It's just a workshop, or a store. There were lots of onyx and leather articles, brass and tools. And there were some onyx lamps being repaired, I think. But there's a courtyard outside, and another building opposite. I'm sure that it belongs to Dernier. And more important, there's a wall at one end of the courtyard, which isn't too high. Meaning that it wouldn't be too difficult to climb over it.
Chapter 12. Disaster. The next morning, after breakfast, Tom and Kamal sat looking at a street map of Istanbul.
Look here,
Kamal said. He pointed to a small street.
Dernier's shop is in this street. Now look at the street behind his shop. We'll have to find a way into the courtyard from that side.
Do you know that part of the city? Asked Tom.
Not very well. As far as I remember, there are only offices, warehouses, and workshops there. At night it will be quiet, but we'll have to be very careful.
Okay. We'll do it tonight, said Tom. They left Kamal's flat in Sicily at 10 o'clock and drove across the city to Dernier's shop. They parked the car 2 blocks from the workshop. There were not many streetlights there, and it was dark.
Come on, said Kamal. We must walk from here.
They walked along the dark streets. They were both wearing dark clothes. They came to the street which ran behind Dernier's workshop and courtyard.
You see, said Kamal quietly. Only offices, warehouses, and workshops. Nobody lives in this street. The courtyard must be up this alleyway, behind these buildings.
They looked up and down the dark street. No cars. No one in sight.
Let's go,
whispered Kamal. They walked quickly up the alleyway. Tom's heart was beating fast, his mouth dry with fear. They stood behind one of the warehouses, beside the courtyard wall. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked.
Help me up,
whispered Kamal.
Quietly.
Tom stood with his back against the wall. He held his hands together. Kamal put his foot in Tom's hands and reached up.
Okay,
Kamal whispered. Kamal looked carefully over the wall. The courtyard was empty. Kamal pulled himself up and sat on top of the wall.
Give me your hand,
whispered Kamal down to Tom.
I'll pull you up.
Tom reached up. Kamal took his hand and pulled. Tom put his other hand on the top of the wall and climbed onto the wall beside Kamal. Kamal dropped silently to the ground in the courtyard. Suddenly, there was a noise. It came from inside the workshop. Kamal pointed to the side. They hurried silently over to the wall and waited. Another noise. A door opened and closed inside the workshop. A light came on in the workshop and shone out across the courtyard. Tom and Kamal stood frozen against the wall. They expected a door to open and men to run out into the courtyard. But nothing happened. They heard people talking and moving about inside. Kamal put his mouth close to Tom's ear.
This is our only chance, he whispered. We have to try to see what they're doing in there.
They moved very slowly towards the window. It was so quiet that Tom could hear his heart beating. At last, they were going to find out what was happening.